Welcome to the Board of Selectmen, April 11th, 24 meeting. It is 6:02. Welcome, everybody. We have called to order and approved the March 21st and the March 28th Selectmen meeting. The 21st meeting was a joint meeting with the Budget Board, and the March 28th was just the Selectmen only.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. Aye. This is the opportunity, public forum, an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Board of Selectmen with any issue not on the agenda. Do I have anybody? Nina?
I know I'm here for planning board too.
Your name?
Nina Perlmutter, I live at 13 Lock Street. I know I'm here for planning board too. I'm on the planning board, I'm on the Shade Tree Committee. I think most of you know me. I know you have a full agenda, but I want to raise a couple of subjects that are not on the agenda, but I think are important. I've already talked to Laurie a little bit about one of them, and that's the village parcel. My husband and I have been consulting on that a lot. We've read the survey results, and I think one of your problems is Kennebunkport may be a small town, but it doesn't appear to have good communication between government and the community. When you came out with your village parcel plan, I was surprised, as were a lot of other members of the community. And I think that's reflected in the diverse opinions of why people voted no on that.
You talking about the village parcel or the town hall?
The town hall, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Let's
okay.
get to the specifics of the town hall.
Okay.
But it's all intertwined. What I'm trying to say is that you don't seem to be getting across to the community something that builds the community for the residents, whether they're part-time or full-time. We have a lot of elderly residents here, including me, unfortunately. And I was thinking that first in communication, maybe a mailing would help when you put together something like that instead of a short little blurb. I know you had an invitation to come to the town hall to look at the plan and everything, but not everyone's going to do that. But maybe when you do something of the project that size, it's worth the cost of a mailing. And maybe having a call-in or an email site where people can come in with questions and comments. My comments are basically that I was very shocked to see that you were planning something close to North Street. And when I talked to Laurie, she said, well, you know, School Street is really Route 9. Well, yes, it is. I don't care if it's I-95. The problem in the summer is the traffic backs up so badly with the tourists that I have trouble getting out of Lock Street, and I know people have trouble getting out of West Street. And anything that adds to that traffic problem is not going to go well with a lot of people who live in the area of North Street. I think if you took the plans and made them a little more community-oriented to include older people, to include the community in some of the things they wanted, you might get a better response. For example, you had a large meeting area in the town hall. That could easily double by expanding it a little bit to a senior center. And you would have the benefit of some volunteer labor as well if people came into a senior center. This morning I went to try to go to a Shade Tree Committee meeting, which was bounced to the library. And in the library I found out they had so many meetings going on, we were down in the archives. You have a lot of meetings going on and you need those meetings rooms, but they're mostly in the morning and they're mostly in the evening. So you could easily combine some senior activities in a town hall that had a little extra room. In addition, people have asked for, and I think it's important, one of the things that holds a community together are things like allotments, which you have plenty of space to put community gardens. Again, for seniors, that really helps. Even though this is not a city, you know, with apartment buildings and everything, people do use allotments. They like to garden, they like to communicate across the plots. And again, you have more people around at that point to work with you. All I'm saying is that you don't need so much expensive housing as you show on your village parcel plan, so much as you need things, buildings, and building a sense of community, bringing the community together where you have more back and forth with people talking to each other, residents as well as government people, your Board of Selectmen, people on the planning board. Be creative. That's what we have brains for. That's all I'm saying, okay? That's my piece on the village parcel. Something more
You
important.
mean the town hall or the village? Oh,
I'm sorry,
no, we,
both. Both.
okay.
Town hall and village parcel really go together. I don't see it going into the North Street Fire Station. You're gonna lose parking for tourists there, and you're gonna have more congestion. I think you're much better off putting it, and if you don't want to go to School Street, at least put it in the center so people can get there from School Street easily, not go down North Street. Okay. What I'm trying to say is utilize the space for everyone, bringing them together. You have the opportunity to do that with 84 acres. And there are lots of things you can do to bring the community together, so they're working with you at the town hall, they're talking to you, and there's just more communication going on. That's my 2 cents on the village parcel and the town hall.
Gotcha.
Okay? More importantly, I think an issue is coming up very quickly on stormwater in the town and flooding in the town. I'm on the planning board, and we are seeing more and more development, for example, community developments. What's the word I'm looking for? Subdivision, thank you. Okay, that's the brain going deteriorating. The subdivisions that are coming in are not on easy land anymore to build on. They've got a lot more wetlands in them. They're using up the space that we didn't use before. The best land is taken. And we see a lot of abutters coming in, very concerned on these applications about stormwater and where it's going to go when you add impervious spaces and you clear lots and you clear trees. You're seeing that also down in Goose Rocks Beach when house applications go in, and we're looking at the non-conforming lots, and we're looking at shoreland development. People are very, very concerned about stormwater. But not everything comes to the planning board. Some of it, building permits, go to the code enforcement office. And we don't get to see them, but what's worse is the abutters don't get them, because the only notice they have is they list the permits on the website. Well, that's very nice, but who looks at that? It's like looking at the newspaper for notices. And this came to light very quickly in my neighborhood, because one of my neighbors, in fact, right next to me, is going into a wetland, got a Tier 1 permit from MDEP, and that was months ago, so that couldn't be appealed. And the only reason that my neighbors knew that this was happening was they put onto his lawn a big, giant, oversized drainage pipe, and that got blown by the wind to the middle of Lock Street, so you had to notice it. One of my neighbors was very, very concerned because she has flooding on her property down in Oak Street, where there is a lot of flooding now from storms. There's been some building down there, some expanding, but on top of that, you know, it's just low and it's wet. And that wetland drains into that area. And so she made an appeal. She barely managed to get that appeal in because there was no notice to abutters. She didn't know there was an application in there. I didn't know there was an application in there. And it went to the Zoning Board of Appeals, who used some of the worst judgment I've ever seen. But also, my neighbor didn't exactly put forth the best arguments of what she wanted, but she had to put them together fast. And honestly, I don't know what the right decision was there. What he's doing going into the wetlands is not going to affect me. I'm on higher ground. It's really not going to bother me. But it concerned me very much that there was no way for the neighbors to know about this. And I really think you need to have an abutter mailing notice. Whenever you get an MDEP permit in there for code enforcement office, I think, you know, besides the code enforcement officer looking at that, and we don't know how much he looked at that, whether he brought in engineering or not. You know, in the planning board, when we're worried about stormwater, we bring in outside engineers to look at the situation, to see if more can be done or if they're doing what they're doing correctly. But I think, you know, if you have that MDEP permit in there, then obviously something's going on with wetlands, and it may change the water course in that neighborhood. And I think neighbors ought to be informed about that. I really do. So that's my 2 cents in that, and I'll let you get to your agenda.
Thanks, Nina.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind. So Nina, if we take, from the stormwater, if we take the code enforcement path out, because you spoke about that, but in the planning board yourself, do you think you have enough tools in your tool chest when it comes into the planning board to deal with it?
Yes.
Okay.
We have engineers in the planning board who look very carefully at that, much more carefully than I do. And also, if there's any concern at all, and the abutters have real concerns, we send it out to Acorn Engineering to take a look at, and we get stormwater reports, and there can be back and forth about that until neighbors' concerns are taken care of or something else changes.
Okay, thanks.
Any comments? No. Okay. Then the next one is, the next item on the agenda is to consider the renewal liquor license submitted by WNA Inc., Cape Pier Chowder House, located at 79 Pier Road, Cape Porpoise, Maine. And that is, it's been approved by the staff and effective now, and it's for the pier. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to renew the liquor license submitted by W&A Incorporated, Cape Pier Charter House, located on Pier Road, Cape Porpoise.
And Alan, I'll ask you to recuse yourself.
But I'll second that, but does the, online, are the typos corrected? So
They are.
Great, so folks know, I will second
I'm
that.
assuming they're corrected online.
Online, they're not corrected, no.
Sorry,
I
they are
think
not.
for the official, we'll have that so that the digital record will show the.
So the application that the town clerk has been corrected, but do you want to just note what those are so the public knows what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
should, just so that,
Go ahead.
I don't have it right in front of me, but
here.
if you're, excellent. So that.
Go ahead, Mary Beth.
Yeah.
Oh, whoever. Oh, you got it.
I'm his wing person.
I appreciate that. That for the food and the beer and wine, the food has been updated. What occurred is there was a digit missing on both sides. So the correct value is 975, 669 on the food, and for the beer and wine, 94, 963. And I will second that.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. And one recusal. 4 and 1. 4 and 0. One recusal.
401.
Right. Okay, review the proposed warrant articles for the town meeting in June. And there's a number of them. So is
Yeah,
that gonna be
Tracy O'Rourke, the town clerk, will take you through the warrant.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
So you have the most current warrant, and you've already voted on the budget numbers for most of them. These are just the housekeeping issues that need to be voted on now. So it will start with Article 2. And we'll do one at a time, I guess.
So we're starting with Article 2? Is that what you said, Tracy?
Yes.
So should we do these individually? Is that the point?
Yeah.
Well then, so Article 2.
I would think we should, yeah.
I have a question. Just one. I literally have one question. Can I go?
Yeah,
You ready?
sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Article 2, Section A, authorization of the town treasurer to advise on approval of municipal, so that readout to dispose of real estate. Is this a boilerplate language? Okay. So,
We've always had.
and so is the understanding then that there is no town vote for disposal of tax-acquired property? We wouldn't have to go out to the town for that vote?
So currently with state law changes on tax acquired, it's a whole different process. And so you need to send a notice to the previous owner. You give them, is it 90 days notice to respond? If they want, then we hire, if they respond, then we enter into a negotiation with them. If they don't, then we have to hire a real estate attorney. It has to be out there for at least 6 months. And then any funds that are above the collection amount for taxes and fees and interest have to go into an account for the previous owners, however that's split.
Right.
And it looks, and they're still putting at the state the rules together. It looks like they're going to, if we can't find the previous owners, to send it to unclaimed property at the state.
Okay.
So this is, yes, this is boilerplate. Yes, this would not have a vote by the town, but also there is a whole different process layered on top of this now.
Would we not want the town to vote on any, either tax acquired or any property the town owns? Wouldn't we want to take that to the voters to agree to sell or not, or dispose?
Well, keep in mind that if you want to even sign a claim deed to a previous owner, once that foreclosure happens, if you don't pass this article, you can't even sell it back to the previous owner. And we do have people that we foreclose upon that then make good on the taxes afterwards, so that we sign a quit claim deed back to those owners. So it would limit you quite a bit.
Would we be able to somehow separate it between, we don't want to, obviously, if somebody pays their taxes, we don't want to limit the ability for the town to go back and do the quit claim deed back to them. But would we want to either add some language or some provision that if the town was going to go out to market and dispose this property, that we would want a town vote on it? I'm looking for some input. I feel like I'm out on a limb here, guys.
Well, we've never come, since I've been here, we haven't come across that, so. We generally have, when we have a quick claim deed, and we agree that they paid the taxes and so forth, the planning board, select board then makes a vote to sell it back to them, or whatever, give it back to them, because they've already paid the taxes. So unless somebody else knows, I don't know of an instance that's happened since 2001.
I guess my question is, don't we want if we were ever to go out and dispose of any town-owned, tax-acquired property to sell, wouldn't we want that to be a vote within the town before we do
Well,
that?
we have another procedure that has to take place now because of the state. We have to go and search the heirs and all that good stuff. You know, and we do, so that we end up having to make sure that the property with any heirs that can be found or if the property is clear. So I don't think that we need to involve going to a town vote to further delay it. All that is delaying it again. So you're talking about a town vote, if it happens in let's say it starts in May, and somebody wants, we've decided to do it, we gotta wait till November to do it, I don't think that's an expeditious process for anybody.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I might be confusing myself, so bear with me. But if we have, so like when we sat down and went through the process of how we were gonna alleviate some of the costs for the town hall proposal, we looked at town-owned land, but then there's much tax-acquired town land, which, as Lori explained with the new Maine law, we can't touch, right? Or it's not that
Well,
we
we can
can't
touch
touch
it.
it, but there's a process
Yeah.
that Lori just walked us through.
That's correct.
Which isn't really, is still being pursued within the state, the true process, or how to implement that process. But what I'm saying is, regardless, after that process happens, we've notified the people, there's no errors, or we agree that we're gonna go back and pay. We have land, so does that mean at any point the municipality itself can sell any of that? Once we go through that process, it's not the town, it's not the residents, it's just the municipality, as this is stated.
So we just went through that with the Beechwood property for the Heritage Housing Trust. And so on that piece of property, we owned it by, I don't know if it was was that tax acquired?
Yeah.
Tax acquired property. So we owned it.
Right.
But in order for the Heritage Trust to claim it and use it, they had to go through there was an heir that surfaced.
Right.
And the heir, they had to then negotiate with the heir through a legal process, and to get that heir to sign off. And once that signed off, the deal was done. What you're saying is, if we did what you wanted to do, it means like I say, if it happened in May and somebody wanted to get started in June or July, we couldn't do it till the following November, because it's on town warrant article. To me, it doesn't make a good expeditious process, and it doesn't add any legal step to anything that we're doing.
I think all it does is I just want to make sure that the residents understand that what this is, if I understand it correctly, that what this is any tax-acquired property, the municipality, without the residents' approval, can dispose of that property, can sell it to somebody, can give it to somebody, can do something with it. And I hear so much, and like when we had the McCabe parcel vote, we heard, very strong feelings about not wanting to sell town property. So that's what I'm sort of hinging on that.
That's different a little bit. That was town property that
No, but-
we purchased.
I know, but this is also town property
Yeah.
by default because it's tax.
I think it was location that they
Yeah.
didn't want us to sell. I don't think it had anything to do with the others.
So I think that would be making a mountain out of a molehill.
Okay.
That's my own opinion, but I'll listen to anybody else here
Yeah,
as well.
I agree with Mike,
I would like to keep it like it is.
yeah.
It's a simpler way of doing things, but it's still being brought forward, and people do find out about it. There's no question about that. So, I think it's fine the way it is. I
Do
think
you
that
agree?
you want it to be advertised that we have a piece of property that's for sale.
Yes. And do you want to sell it? Or do you want to give it away?
Well, that's what we're supposed to do as the Board of Selectmen.
Well, according to this article, yes. And I just,
Yeah.
I understand, I understand.
Okay, very good. So other questions on this? Nobody? Okay, go ahead. What
Did
else?
you want to vote each
But we have to vote it
individual?
in.
We don't need to read it all, do we? It's just a matter of proposing.
These have already been voted in, haven't they?
No,
All-
these are the
it's the- Oh,
house-
it's the other, you're right.
Yeah.
It's the other ones, yeah.
I make a motion to, for Article 2, in its completion, as is, to be voted on.
I have a second?
Second,
All those in favor? Okay, 3, 4.
Opposed?
4-1, okay. It's fair.
Okay, so then Article 3, is just talking about tax abatements and accepting grant money, revenue sharing, and carrying forward unencumbered surplus and fund balances as of June 30th, 2025. And the Budget Board did vote, and they voted 11-0 to approve it.
I'll entertain a motion for
Motion.
Article 3.
Motion to approve Article 3 as written?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0.
Okay, Article 4 is just the Select Board, it's not the Budget Board, and it's to authorize prepayment of taxes not yet committed, accept easement deeds on behalf of the town, and accept unconditional and conditional gifts of money or property on behalf of the town.
Entertain a motion.
Approve
Article 4.
Article 4 is written.
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0. Article 5.
Actually, we've already done that one, so we're going to skip to Article 11.
Oh, yeah, we have the budget.
Yes.
Go to
So
11. We've done the
Article
budget. Yep.
11, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $4,173,950 from estimated non-property tax revenues, $200,000 from undesignated fund balance, and $600,000 from capital project reserve account to reduce the property tax commitment. And again, the Budget Board voted 11-0.
I move that we accept Article 11 as written.
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0. Okay, Article
Okay,
12.
Article 12, to see if the town will vote to authorize the transfer of a 1980 GMC four-wheel drive utility truck, commonly known as Kennebunkport Brush 35, from the town of Kennebunkport Fire Department to the Goose Rocks Beach Fire Company, with a condition: if the Goose Rocks Beach Fire Company sells Brush 35, all net proceeds of the sale will be used toward the purchase of firefighting or rescue equipment approved by the fire chief.
I have a question.
Okay,
So we're gonna go ahead and give these to Goose Rocks Beach, correct, Fire Department?
That- yeah.
Yeah, I just was wondering
Why
what
are
they're
we
gonna do
shuffling?
with it.
They're gonna sell it.
They're gonna sell it?
No, they're
Yeah.
not.
I
No.
must have missed it.
They can, the fire companies will be able to do what they want with it. So the reason this comes up is, the vehicles, two of the three vehicles on this list were bought with Kittredge money. So then the Kittredge money at the time was company held, and they bought the vehicle that they wanted. So it's been kind of customary that it goes back to the fire company. The first vehicle, the one we're talking about now, was bought with donations that the Goose Rocks Beach Fire Company got with a specific appeal in 1980 to build this truck. So to me, it's kind of the same as Kittredge. It was done that way, so it should go back to the company.
So these are all trucks that basically you would sell anyway?
Yeah, so the third truck is the ladder truck. So when we get our new one, once we get it in service and we're all trained on it, we have the ability to give the other one back. Because that was, again, another Kittredge truck.
And so they're probably gonna sell all that equipment.
More than likely. That's what's happened in the past. I
Okay.
can't speak for now, but.
All right.
But they are committed to use those proceeds for equipment.
Right, there's an approval that goes with it to use proceeds, and I've said a bunch of times, the only thing I'd want to see that money go back, where I'd like to see that money go is back into the company-held Kittredge account to just help keep it going. They bought the vehicles, in the beginning with it, so we ought to keep it moving.
Thank you.
While you're there, let's do 13.
Yeah.
You ready? Anybody have any questions on 13?
We're on 12, I thought.
12.
We just
12,
did,
we haven't done 12 yet.
that was, he just did 12.
We haven't voted on it.
I know, but I was gonna try to put them all together.
Good.
That's-
I just want to say, I understood what you were going. I just want to say that.
So I just thought while he was up there, we would do all three together.
Sounds good to me.
That's all. So anybody have any questions on Article 13?
No,
Anybody have any questions on Article 14?
no.
I'll entertain a motion to accept Article 12, 13, and 14.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay.
all right, thank you.
Five
So I'll
zero.
prepare the next draft with the votes, and you'll sign it at your next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Trace.
Thank you.
Oh, Tracy, don't go anywhere.
We got more. So,
Six.
see, it'd be amendment to the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance to comply with LD 2003 regarding new state housing law. Now, we have previously approved these.
Yes, so
And
this
we-
is the actual order that the board is ordering that these items be put on the ballot for June 11th.
That we have done both 1 and 2,
Yes, you've discussed them many
and
times.
many times, so I
So
would.
this is
oh,
just putting them on the ballot.
Yeah, so I entertain a motion to accept question 1. I probably ought to let the people know what it was. It was an amendment to the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance to comply with LD 2003 regarding the new state housing law. That's question 1. And we have really gone through the detail on that. And then on question 2, it's the amendment to the Kennebunkport Town Code Floodplain Management Ordinance, and we have reviewed that as well many times. So I would accept a motion to accept question 1 and question 2.
I'll make a motion to approve the order of question 1 and question 2.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yeah, and
5-0.
Oh, all right, discussion?
Question, go ahead.
Sorry. So I'm unsure on how so when we go out, we had made that comment about going back and doing a couple things, which was having the growth committee look at the growth map again, and then also getting in a developer to make us understand, the density level that we would need to actually create an affordable place. Is that still in the queue? Okay.
So if you keep going on further down to the detail, you will see that all of the changes that we had looked at are there.
Yeah, but these were items that were brought up from our joint meeting as kind of a
Yeah,
side plate, so.
Those aren't in that write-up, I don't think.
No, because they're not ordinance changes.
yeah.
Those are direction from the board that they want to
I
pursue.
think that's what we're getting confused with, is there were directions from the board, but they weren't in the ordinance changes.
Yeah.
So your question is just I heard it was
Yeah.
just to be sure that those are still being pursued. Just some assurance they are, is that correct?
Yeah, I think, because, again, bringing up the questions of why we wanted to relook at, or, some of the stuff about the growth planning, or have the growth planning committee look at the growth map, sort of parlayed into what Nina, Ms. Perlo was saying at the beginning, some of the flood areas and the growth. And I know it would be good for the growth committee to come back with their findings. I think that will help the public understand, as we're going forward, how we're going to treat some of these unique things within our town. And I think the problem that I'm struggling with, and I'll vote yes for the warrant, but the problem that I'm struggling with LD 2003, and I just would like a little leadway here, and I thank the board for the leadway, is I've been thinking about this a lot, and if we're trying to do affordable housing, and if we know that it has to be density, like when we talked with the planning board and the growth planning board that time, they're going to have, developer's going to have to come back to us for like a spot development, a spot, what do you call it, spot
If you're talking
ordinance?
a contract zone,
Yeah, because they would need more than what LD 2003 is going to allot them.
not necessarily.
No.
Not necessarily, but I'm hoping that whatever we do with affordable housing in town doesn't result in a contract zone. I'm hoping that it is a result of whatever we do to change the zoning ordinances, et cetera, in compliance with LD 2003. So I'm not thinking, I haven't thought contract zone in any of the stuff that we've been doing, although people have done it, but I haven't thought of it.
So can you just help me understand, Mike, then, how do you get the density? Like, I don't, how does a contractor get to that density level that we hear that they need to make the economics work?
Well, we
for-
have to,
for
we have
the-
to, as you heard as we were going through the LD 2003, our ordinances are pretty well in sync with LD 2003. However, having said that, what we have been doing for the last year, and Werner was working on it, was to take a look at some of like the free enterprise zone and other places where we've got, where it would, like, we require 40,000 square feet and so forth. He had been looking at form-based, and we had been discussing that quite a bit for a couple of years now. And I think that that's what's gonna prevent us from having any need for a contract zone. It remains to be seen, however, how the ordinances are gonna be changed. For the, you know, LD 2003 is gonna have a lot to do with it.
So you're saying that, so I guess where I am is that LD 2003 doesn't get us to, oh, here's a question. Does LD 2003 get us affordable housing density needs for somebody to come in here and actually do it? Or are they going to be coming back for some kind of zoning allowance to allow them to get the numbers that they need to actually, so we actually get affordable housing?
But we can't do zoning allowances or change anything unless it's voted on by the people in town.
Okay.
Is that, I want to make sure I'm saying that correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that would be either a zoning amendment or, like you said, a contract zone.
Yeah.
And I think that's where and that's why I would like, to understand when somebody that does affordable housing comes in and explains it, because I just, when we've done some of our discussions, and, some people have provided us with numbers, when we read about other towns that are ever doing this, it's, I think you said it in one meeting, Mike, it's density, density, density. And this 2.5 times doesn't, in my unknown knowledge, to think that that's
Yeah.
enough density.
The density, as a matter of fact, I went to that seminar up with the governor and all of town managers and the mayors and so forth, just a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking density, density, density. And the reason that we have been talking density, density here has always been in relationship to the town parcel, the village parcel. And the reason we were talking density, density, density is because in order to put the utilities in
Okay,
that go from
yeah,
North Street to School Street, we're looking at 10, 12, $13 million now. It used to be $1,000 a foot or something. Now anyway, it used to be 6 million, now it's a lot more than that. So in order to make affordable housing, if we end up selling the parcel or somebody buys the parcel, it's got to be density, density, density.
so then the factor that has to be overlaid is either the cost of the parcel and the amount to develop it. And in our case, that would be, as you said,
Right.
mega dollars to
Right,
get
and
these.
the reason we haven't done anything to do the utilities and so forth at the village parcel is because the town was very clear that they didn't want to spend any more money on the village parcel to do that. So in order to get that, if it ever gets developed, in order to get it developed, you're going to have to get a developer who you deal with, that he can make sense out of density, especially if you want to have mixed value housing, high-end, low-end,
And so
affordable.
when we get to so playing that then, to complete that thought, Mike, if a developer came in here or somebody wanted to develop that, then that has to go back to the voters, because that would be a density change, right?
If a developer wanted to come in, what would have to go to the voters is that we sell it to a developer. Unless we have some kind of a partnership arrangement with the developers. Am I saying that?
But if we want to, if we need more than 2.5 times, which LD 2003, we would have to go to the voters for
We'd have
more
to
than
change it.
two.
We'd
Yeah, have to
an
change the
ordinance
ordinance.
change,
Yep.
and that would have to go to the
Yeah,
voters.
have to go
Got
to
it.
voters.
Okay.
I want to be
Got it.
clear, there's been a good discussion, but it's really tangential to question one.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
I'm worried that people are going to hear this discussion, have opinions, and vote no on question one.
We've already approved it.
We've
So,
approved it.
we have
I'm-
approved it, yeah.
I'm concerned about the public.
Oh, I got you.
hearing
I'm with
this
you.
discussion, thinking that it's relating to whether they should decide to vote yes or no to question one. And I think we ought to be clear that question one is simply bringing our ordinances in compliance to the state for the LD 2003, which is, Mary Beth has pointed out, is a 2.5 density, and that may not be enough to get where we want to go, and that would be a different issue that would be addressed by the town and the residents of the town through ordinance changes. So if anyone was hearing this discussion and thinking that, gosh, I'm not comfortable with that, I don't want to vote for question one, I would just hope they would see that those are different
Yeah.
issues.
But I think part of the discussion too, from another perspective, I agree with what you said, John, but I also think that it may have been some clarifying, because if people have been listening to us on like the growth planning and stuff, some of these comments came up. So I was just trying to knit it together to say, okay, this is what it is, this is what it isn't,
Good,
you know.
good, and
And
it's
so
good,
it's-
good discussion.
Thank
I
you,
just- I
John.
was just
Thank you. Thanks.
But I was, just wanted to be sure
Yep.
folks were clear.
Yep.
Yeah, good,
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for question one and question two.
so moved.
And
Second.
all these in favor? Okay, 5-0.
Thank you.
I didn't get to the next one here. And then we have the Cape Porpoise Pier bid update, item 7. Lori, you want to?
Yeah, so tonight we have with us Barney Baker, our engineer from GEI, and who's been working on the Cape Porpoise Pier bid, and Michael Claus, who is our part-time consultant on this project. And in your packet, there is a memorandum outlining the bids and what we found, and so I'm gonna turn it over to Barney and let him give you an overview, and then I'll fill in anything I think he's missed.
Okay, thank you, Lori. And Mike's here, and also the town committee on this has included Chris and Eric, and several other folks have provided input. Project has been a long time in development, and I wish I had better news, but the news isn't all bad. We got 4 bids 3 weeks ago for the project, which in this construction climate for a marine project is very good. The fact that we had 4 groups interested in the project. Bid process was, the bids ranged from 5.56 million to $8 million, and the town budget for that project was about $1.5 million and less than that. So, but just to talk about the bids received, all qualified companies, the low bidder, Proc Marine Company, is the same outfit that built the Government Wharf project. Actually, the company that did the project was acquired by Proc Marine. But anyway, first-class outfit. So all things being equal, if we had the money, I would be recommending that Proc Marine Company be awarded the project. And looking forward to the construction. But we do have this shortfall. And so what are we going to do? Well, the
Barney, can you first talk about the cost and just our verification of the project costs?
Sure. So we've got 4 bids that came in. They were high. So it was, GEI went back and looked at their numbers. The cost escalation across the project was fairly steady. In other words, there was a markup almost on every single item of a significant percentage. And so the other thing we did, we can't talk to the contractors. We can't, because of the grant requirements, we can't go to the contractors and say, you know, why is your bid so high here? Why is it, you know, how did you allocate your costs? Did you misunderstand the drawings? So what we did was we looked at the bid results that came in. We had some, I think some 35 items that they bid on. So there was a breakdown to look at. We looked across and saw how each company bid on those items, and we saw some consistency. And we feel good about those numbers. In other words, if we were to put the project out tomorrow, we would likely get the same numbers. The other thing we did was we do have the benefit of having Maine DOT as a project partner, and we sent the project to DOT and said, can you look at the results? And they came back and said, we've analyzed the numbers based on bids that have come in on other projects recently, and we think that the low bid is within $150,000 of their estimate. So basically what that says is that, again, if we were to put the project out to bid tomorrow, we'd get the same result. Sometimes you think, you know, that there might be an aberration, and if you put the project out to bid again, that's only happened once in my career, but you do get a lower result the second time. But that is not the case here. I don't want to let anybody have any wishful thinking. So, are there any questions as to, you know, from the, as to why we're so high, or there's a couple of, you know, marine projects have just gone, all construction projects have accelerated because of COVID, because of shortfalls in material prices. We've tried to keep up with that as a company, and in this case we had an independent assessment done of the cost to guide us. We also have to go through various benchmarks with DOT, and if you remember last fall, we were in the same position of coming back to the council and asking for additional funding because they thought the project was competitive but was underfunded. So we did increase the funding last fall. We asked for more money than you gave us, but you gave us the minimum amount that we needed to satisfy the grant agencies to get the project out on the street, and that's what we did.
Or we also did 3 deducts, and that 5.5 is after those deductions, right? So we should just say that publicly, that
Yes.
was the bid when we took as much away as we could.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to explain that process, so to try to keep things within budget, you have a couple of tools that you can use. One is you put in deduct items that, in the case of the EDA grant, they allow you to deduct those items. Say your bids come in high, you have the ability to tailor your estimate by deducting those items. So with the Pier project, we took elements of the project that were important, and they will be built at one time, at some stage, hopefully. But if they could be afforded now, that would be great. So we took some floats on the east side,
South side, southern
south
floors,
side,
yeah,
and we also took a hoist, and we took the solar panels off the building. And you can see those are the 3 deduct items. And so those items can be added back into the project. Say, for example, we get to a point where we can award the project. We're able to, and some additional money comes available, we can add those items back into the project. And so they're there, and they may be part of a future project, or they may somehow become part of this project if funding can be organized for that.
Barry, When you, were just, speaking, and you talked about the November, and when we went back out to the voters and asked, you know, you guys came back and said, look, we need more money, and that's, like John said, we took out those 3 items, but we still went back to the voters for the 700,000.
Correct.
But I think I just heard you make a statement that we funded it to what you thought was the minimum, so I just need clarity on that statement you made.
Yeah, so what we did is we estimated the project with the base bid and the deduct items.
Right.
Well, we estimated the whole project. And at that time, we said, if we can get $700,000 more, we can definitely pay for the base part of the project. If we could get more money than that, we
Okay.
could definitely fund the
Yeah,
other
so
items.
it was the Phase B that we, okay,
Right,
that's what we were
and,
talking.
you know, everything was a little up in the air. We were asked, is there a chance that we could afford the deduct items if we just went for the base bid amount? And I said, well, yes, of course, if we get competitive bidding and prices come in and all things align, sure. The other thing that happened is, which is worth talking about, and is those 2 January storms. They have created a lot of work for this type of contractor in Maine. And so these contractors that we've got and that have put in prices have got a lot of work on the books. They want this Cape Porpoise job, the low bidder. They do want this job very badly. But if they don't get it, they've got other work to go to. So that's got to have affected their pricing. So any additional questions on the pricing? Because we've been looking at options to increase the makeup for that shortfall in funding.
So just one last question. So the January storms didn't increase any work that impacts this, that would cause this, the requirements of what was needed to go up. That's not in this 1.5 or this bid.
Correct. We have not changed the project as a result of the January storm, but as you'll see from the next presentation,
Yeah.
we have
Yeah, John knew where I was going. I wanted to go to FEMA.
we have essentially increased the need for the project.
Right.
Because, well, I don't want to steal the thunder of the next presentation. So where are we right now? Well, the bids are currently open. We have another 45 days to work on grant awards and, find some additional money and award the project. We can also talk to the low bidder, and I have talked to the project manager. We're allowed to ask them to extend that open bid period. In other words, these opportunities that are laid out in Lori's memo each come with a timeline. And we're not saying that we're going to complete those timelines, but we have a good opportunity to, we miss the option of getting that money entirely if we reject the bids at this point. So what we'd like to do is keep the bids open and continue to shake the bushes for some additional money. And the one grant opportunity that has been identified is one that the state, Governor Mills has put forward. It's an infrastructure funding for projects exactly like this one that are in need of increased resiliency. And she set aside in her plan a significant amount of money and identified at least in the early stages, that the funding might be up to 1.5 million per project. And if that becomes available, and depending on who you talk to, it will, then this project, as Lori can attest, having talked to the DMR commissioner who's leading the charge, and also the DOT port facilities person, this project would be a good candidate for that. So holding out for that would mean getting an extension from the contractor to keep the bids open a little longer, getting EDA approval for the additional time, and also getting the state approval for the additional time, all of which seem to be lining up if the grant comes forward. EDA seems to be very amenable. Mike has been talking to the EDA project manager. We've had discussions with the DOT project manager. What the town, the additional funding unfortunately comes with additional match requirement, and you'll see in your memo, and that if it goes forward as we think it might, if what we're trying to do works out, there is an additional requirement from the town for
378,000?
yeah, the match for that.
And so the match can't be some of the funding that the town is already putting into?
So the EDA grant requires a 20% match, and that can be state or local funds. But state money match can't be from EDA, it has to be local money. So basically, if you look at, we have 500,000 in DOT SHIP grant and main adaptation infrastructure, we got a total of 1.8. We need to match local funds 1.8.
Okay, that's where the local funds.
Other questions?
Does delaying the time, does increasing the timeline, do we know what that would look like? To extend the bids, to leave the bids open for how long?
So right now, by contract, we've got them leaving the bids open until May 20th. And we're looking to add another 30 or 60 days to that. So that would take us to as late as July 20th. We're, it's an evolution that may, again, we're not going to stop working on trying to get the grants, so we'll know more what those dates are. As soon as we've got a date, we'll be, trying to coordinate that with the contractor.
What would be the last possible date that a contractor could get to start the work in November?
My contractor colleague's not here, but what he's got to do is he's got to mobilize his equipment. So it's not that he can't start then, is he going to be busy on another job because he's had to wait to get started. So there's certainly plenty of time for him to get moving and go. And so if we give him the encouragement and also the funding partners, if they give us encouragement, which we pass on to the contractor, that is the essence of the discussion that we would be having with them. Physically, it's possible, but are they tied up in other locations? Proc Marine.
Wait and not take another job while we're trying to get our money together, right? So that they're not committed on something we need them to move, so.
We can't expect them to do that, but Proc Marine is not as large as Chimbro or Reed and Reed, but they are the largest marine contractor on the coast. And they have, I think, 7 or 8 barges, 7 or 8 crews that do projects. They do, put municipalities before they do a lot of residential work also, but they tend to put municipalities first. They're doing work in the river now. They built Government Wharf. They're very qualified and large. They're gonna do, I would guess, I haven't been able to talk to them, but they're gonna do the bulk of all the marine work, and then there'll be a separate, likely be a subcontractor to do the building, because that's not their forte. But they did Government Wharf, they did that building too.
Well, they were also the ones that rebuilt the pier in Cape Porpoise years ago, and they did a great job.
Right.
Did they fix the bait, were they the ones that fixed the bait,
For a temporary path.
Yes, they
Yeah,
did the
yeah, they
temporary
did,
repair.
Yep.
So-
Yes, they did.
So Laurie or Barry, do we have an idea? So in the notes and communications, April 17th is when the state was going to make, do we know or have an idea from them of when they would start allocating funds? Or, is it 6 months out? Is it 2 weeks out? Do we have any clue?
So what we've heard from both DMR and DOT is that they would like to expend these funds quickly, or commit them, let's say, commit the funds. They said within a 6 to 8 week timeline. Because the purpose of the first 25 million is for working waterfronts that had damage from the storms. And so they're trying to address an immediate need. Their timeline is dependent on how it passes and when it passes the state. So if it's a 2/3 vote, then it's considered emergency legislation, and they can start committing within 30 to 60 days. If it is not a 2/3, just a regular majority, then it's 60 to 90 days, I think. So it depends. So if you read the paper this week, you'll see that the parties at the State House are in conflict about this particular fund. There was an article yesterday in the Press Herald, more budget talk today between the governor and the Speaker of the House, urging the Speaker of the Senate to call these votes in. And he says he didn't hear them ask for a committee vote. So anyway, they are going back and forth. They are supposed to adjourn next week, so they should have this resolved by next week. But if they choose, they can extend the legislative session. So we could also apply for some of this other funding. It would prolong the timeline. I mean, we definitely would not be doing it this season. We could be looking at the 2025-2026 season. Congressional directed spending is an application process that just opened, but that is at least a year before you find out if you're funded. And then you have to go through probably another 6-month window. We could apply for the Port Infrastructure Development Program. They said we would be eligible. It's unclear to me how eligible. We can apply in June for the Working Waterfront Access Grant. That requires a town vote to authorize a covenant on the property. So there are some other options. It's just these seem like the quickest to meet our current construction. Mike also talked with Megan Cole this week, our project manager at EDA, and we had put in requests through our congressional delegation to go ask EDA once again if they had any other funding, and they are having another meeting tomorrow to determine if any of this leftover disaster funding that we accessed from other projects, is there any leftover funds that they might access for us as well.
But this is the best avenue I think we have right now, is what we're trying to do.
If you want to stay on this time frame.
Yeah.
And I think we all do, I believe.
But I want to be clear that there are no promises. This is just, we're in the woods, and this is our best path out, we think.
What shape is the pier in if we had to delay it till another year?
I think we'd have to do some repairs.
We have to
Yeah.
do that. I'm just trying to get it.
Yeah, unfortunately, the biggest load on a pier, and I know Frank's gonna come and talk, but it's a storm event.
Yeah.
So when you ask you know, what's the worst-case scenario? It's, you know, how big is the storm, and what's the direction, and does it get loose and get under the pier or something like that? It's just, usually it's a catastrophic event.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
Not happy, no.
Was Mike gonna?
Mike Claus, do you have anything to add they want to know? At the podium, Mike Claus?
He's all smiles, he's gonna write the check.
I'll write the check. I think the state and the federal people have been very helpful in trying to keep this project moving forward, so, and we're gonna keep, and Governor Collins, Senator Collins' office has been especially helpful in pushing the EDA a little, and I think that's why we're getting some action on that end. Our project manager at EDA was surprised that she got a call from her people saying, come talk. So she said, that's a good sign. But we will wait and see and do the best we can.
So
Thanks, Mike.
Mike's question, so I guess I'm just thinking about the parallel path in case it does, in case something doesn't unfortunately work out in the path that we're choosing. Do we need to start thinking about a parallel path about what things, if any, need to be shored up at the pier if this thing doesn't start in November?
It was like Lori said, repairs will have to be done. That's what she
It's-
said.
It was the
Okay.
wall, you know, as you drive, as the fishermen drive onto the pier on the left, there's a stone wall. There was definitely some damage there from the storm event that Barney has already documented. Probably, I think that, you know, Barney will, if we don't get action and Barney needs to take a look at it, again, I think that's where you'll see it on the left side going in. We'll probably have to do some kind of temporary repairs.
And I think Frank could certainly talk, but I think there are some pilings that would need to be replaced and some ladders and of course, you know, there's ever shifting underneath the bait building.
The cross members need to be addressed on the big pier, on the pier side. There's a few cross members that are in trouble.
Listen, I think Frank and Barney have been through all that, and you know, we haven't repaired them because they were in the project, but if we don't do the project, you know, we'll be back out there pointing those things out.
Okay, thanks. So there's three options for the board to consider tonight, and those are I'll go down the three without giving any opinion or anything. One is to reject the bids while we seek alternative funding and re-examine the scope of the project. That could have other consequences for us. Request $1.5 million from the voters to complete the project. The third one is ask PROC for a bid award extension and continue to seek additional funds from the state and federal agencies. And that's the one that I prefer that we consider.
I agree,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm with you guys.
I think that gives us the best option. And so I guess, do you want to, do we need a vote on that?
I think we need direction from the board of whether you want us to request a bid award extension from PROC.
I would say that's what we want to do, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's five, all in favor to do that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
pursue 22, 23,
Yeah.
whatever that.
Can I have a vote?
You can have a vote.
Make
your
a-
vote.
make a motion-
Go ahead, you make motion, go, Al.
Go ahead, I'll make a motion to seek additional funding to complete the project and extension of time for the bid from PROC.
Second.
All those in favor, okay, 5-0. Are there any
wondering if we
questions?
were
I
doing
forgot to ask,
informal.
are there any
We're just gonna
questions in
say
the
no.
audience? No hands raised, okay. So that's the direction we want to go in. So
I think it's a great,
we got to bring it home.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work,
A lot of work.
My God, we gotta make
Thanks.
this come in.
a lot of work.
We done with that? Okay, next,
Thank you, Barney.
oh, thank you both, yeah,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
Thank you, Frank, everybody. Enterprise budget presentation. The first one is the recreation special revenue budget. Steph, are you going to do that?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yes, I'm here to present the special revenue budget for the Parks and Recreation Department. As you remember, the Parks and Recreation Department operates on two budgets, and I had the general fund budget here a couple weeks ago, and now this is the special revenue budget. So just as a reminder, next slide, please. There are three of us at the Recreation Department. Andy and Brighton are programmers, and they have most recently hit their one-year mark with the town. So we are off to the races now, and they are doing a great job getting lots of new programs going. The special revenue budget is used for all of our programs, special events, trips, everything we do, and all the related expenses. Having this budget gives us the ability to change throughout the year, add new programs, remove programs that aren't doing well, and be flexible with what we're offering the community. At the end of the fiscal year, this year, we are asking to move $85,000 from this fund back into the general fund. So I've highlighted the revenue categories and how much of our revenue comes from where. So as you can see, a lot of our revenue comes from our camps. We have our 8-week summer camp in the summer. We have our outdoor adventures for the middle schoolers. We have vacation week camps. We have 6 additional summer camps that are just weekly camps. So we do a lot in the summer. And then our after-school programs, sports and fitness are the other top 2. Right now, just to let you know, in our after-school program, we have 104 registered.
Stephanie, is it safe to say for people in the audience and here, that in the audience and on TV, that the $85,000 reflects a contribution to the town
Correct.
mill rate?
Correct.
Right, thanks.
Phenomenal.
Nice way to put it.
That's rather.
Great program.
Nice way to put it.
Yes. So yeah, our top revenue categories do very well, but we also offer programs for every age group and every kind of activity. So, this year we started some new preschool programming, and all of our youth, senior trips, luncheons, everything we do is all reflected in the revenue. Next slide. Expenses. Over 50% of our expenses go to wages for instructors. And then the other top category is all the expenses that are associated with programs, supplies, fees for field trips and all that kind of stuff. Our software fees are fees for the registration software that we use. It's called MyRec. That's what that fee is. And then our fuel for buses and turf maintenance at the parks is also there. So when you look at our revenue, next slide, please. Well, I see a typo right away. Oh, no, you fixed it on that one. That's on mine. Okay. All of our categories are up a little bit this year compared to last budget year. The one that has gone down is our special events, and that is because we have decided not to run the Chalk the Port event this coming year. So that's why it looks like revenue is down in that category, but we are making up for it in all the other categories.
Did you say you're not gonna do the walk the chalk?
Yeah.
Chalk the walk?
Yeah.
Chalk the port.
Or the walk.
That's
Or the
too
walk,
bad.
yeah.
That was- that's
They had to
like a lot of fun.
cancel it because people couldn't remember the name.
It's so weather dependent.
Yes, it was very weather dependent. It was a lot of work on the staff and a lot to ask of the community with sponsorships and donations, and so it was a lot, and we think we can spend our time better and doing other types of programming.
And you still have opportunities for sponsorships if
Oh, absolutely.
anybody wants to sponsor other concerts and community events.
Absolutely.
How many kids in the,
Good
how
to-
many kids in the after-school?
Good to know.
We have 104 right now in the
104.
after-school program. I would say on a daily basis, average number is about 35 a day.
Wow.
What Nina brought up at the open session about the senior center, is that room used as a senior center, or?
It is not, it is a multi-purpose room, and so we do, senior activities, we have chair yoga, we have certain, different activities going on in the room, but I would not say it is a senior center where they can just drop in, play cards or things like that.
Anybody
Yeah.
else have questions?
Nope. Next slide. Just a summary of our expenses again, so you can see totals, and then the transfer out at the bottom there. Next slide. This is our mission, with some great pictures we have here of all the different things that we do and different age groups that I try to include here. But I'd be happy to answer any questions about the special revenue budget.
Anybody?
No, but we had a good time on Monday.
Good, I'm glad you did, yes. We had an
That was
event, for
nice.
those of you that didn't know, for the eclipse. We were out on the field watching.
And we're gonna do it again next year.
Yeah.
Save your glasses.
You're right, right.
So how many actually showed up at the field?
Oh, there was probably
100,
75
150?
to 100,
Yeah,
yeah. There
yeah,
was,
in that range.
yeah.
Some people came and went and.
Yeah,
so forth.
exactly. Nobody, a
It was
lot of them didn't stay the whole time.
Very
but
nice event.
It was fun. It was really,
When the kids get out of
Unique.
school, the parents came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, it was very nice.
yeah, and the resource officer was there and. it
Yeah,
was- Yeah, it was nice. It was
Yep.
nice.
it was.
So
Okay,
thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
I did the deed.
Then we want to hear from our wastewater friends, the budget, Eric and Chris.
This is nice, because they're giving us all the revenue.
Aren't we supposed to vote on this?
That's it.
We are looking for a vote on the budgets as well.
We already,
I'll make a motion to approve the budget.
okay.
For the special
I
revenue
didn't realize, I really didn't realize, I thought we had already approved these budgets.
Not the special revenue ones.
Okay,
We wait until we're done with the general fund.
I'll
Okay,
second
yeah.
that motion.
okay.
All in favor?
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay. Wastewater. Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, I'll move through this as quick as I can. So I'm presenting tonight. Eric's trying to hide behind me, but that doesn't work too well because he's quite a bit taller than me, so. Next slide, please. This is just a snapshot of, the water that we treated this past year, as well as the amount of biosolids we produced and number of yards of compost. And you can see in comparison to other years, the gallons that we treated were up quite a bit. Next slide. It's certainly no secret that over the last, 6 years now, we've been reinvesting into the wastewater infrastructure. This is obviously taking some time. Even if we had all the money in the world, we wouldn't be able to do, all this work at once. Even though we've been investing, we still have a lot more work to do. Next slide. But I just wanted to go over what we have accomplished so far. So we have replaced the Walls District pump station and the Patty Creek pump station. Both of those are currently online. We do still have some finish work to do there, so there's paving and fencing that still needs to go up. But we'll be working on that in the coming month. Next slide. Back at the plant, we've been working on putting in and getting prepped for the new presses that will be going in, the new centrifuges. So the top picture that you see is the new polymer system that'll introduce the polymer to the new centrifuges. That's in place now. The bottom picture is the bay in which we're going to have a roll-off dumpster in. The floor plates have been installed in there, and that's ready to accept a 30-yard roll-off when we actually start using the new centrifuges. And on the right-hand side, that's just a picture of one of the old belt filter presses, and we have currently made preparations to have those removed. One of them is actually pretty well demoed at this point as of today. Next slide.
So do you take those to the scrapyard?
Yes, it's going to scrap.
Did you want to buy one?
I'll sell it to you real cheap, Alan. So we obviously still have more work that needs to be done. Next slide. So this is the fiscal sustainability plan. This is the kind of overall snapshot of the plan that was completed back in 2018. You know, at that time, the plan identified just about $31 million in, you know, reinvestment that needed to be done. As you can imagine, that number is probably quite a bit higher in this day and age due to the inflation that we've seen over the last 6 years. Next slide, please. So when we look at what we want to replace at the plant or out in the collection system, you know, we use a criticality analysis. And, you know, so what we're looking at is, you know, the likelihood of failure and the consequence of failure. And that kind of helps us draw a conclusion as to what we need to be working on next. Next slide. So for this year, we're looking at replacing the programmable logic controllers for the influent and effluent pumps. This is a controller that actually automates the pump function, so when we're not there, this is kind of what turns the pumps on and off and adjusts the speed based on the flow. Next slide. So this is basically a similar piece of equipment, but this is the control panel for the influence screens. So this is what runs the two large influence screens. The screens are what screen out the inorganic materials and the solids that we don't want coming into the process. Again, this is, you know, another PLC that's a legacy product that we need to replace. Next slide. Grinder pumps. These have been an ongoing cost for us. We have approximately 88 of these in town left. These are at individual residences. You know, these pumps, like anything else, age out. You know, we do have to, you know, replace several of these a year. Sometimes we're able to bring these back to the shop, you know, replace parts on them and put them back in service for a little while longer. Sometimes we aren't able to do that. We're at the point right now where we're down on inventory, so we need to purchase 10 of these to kind of bring our inventory back up so that we have spares that we can place into service. And then we had a failure at our pump station down at the beach. This is the major pump station that's down at the intersection of Dyke Road and Kings Highway. Back in November, we had a flooding event down there that we weren't made aware of right away. Before it came to our attention, the picture that you see here is actually a picture of the pumps as well as the electric motors that run the pumps. Those became submerged as well as the electrical panel for that pump station. Next slide. So this is just a picture. This just gives you a good idea during the January storm what we were looking at for water down there. As you can see, it's actually over the base of the door at this point. So when we look at something like this and we know that we need to, make something a little bit more resilient, this is a good picture that shows us, yes, we need to bring, that electrical equipment back upstairs and get it higher than the water that we're seeing. So, we're looking for a little bit of money to make those changes at this pump station. And in return, I think that we can push off, the upgrade of this pump station out a few more years. That'll give us a little bit more flexibility in our capital budget in the coming years.
Do you have an estimate on that work, to lift this, to get these up?
To actually lift this pump station.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't actually be lifting the pump station.
No, the pumps, the mechanics, to get
Yeah.
it out of the water.
Yeah, so if we were to have an incident, we don't have a way to pull those pumps up any higher than they are now. But what we can do is bring the electrical upstairs and make sure that we have redundant some pumps in the basement to, evacuate that water so we don't have the pumps go underwater. Because right now, and it's difficult to tell, I don't think anybody's been down to this pump station, but this is a 2-story pump station. So the door that you see now walks in it's on street grade. There's actually a basement to this.
Oh, really?
Yes, and so that, right now, the electrical panel, the pumps, and, the electrical motors that drive the pumps are in the basement.
So you can move the motors and the electric panel up away from the pumps
We can move the electric panel up, but we cannot move the pumps
or the
up
motors?
or the motors, so.
So you gotta keep the water away with some pumps.
Correct,
You
Yep.
think you can do that, all right?
yep.
So, how do you keep the water away from some pumps if the water's all around the building? And
You just,
tide's coming in, how do you actually?
you gotta take it
Yep.
out faster than it comes in.
So, the particular incident in November wasn't the result of a tidal event like this. It was a result of a communications failure, and a sump pump failure. This, I don't think is going to be the norm. Certainly, if we think we're going to have another king tide event like this in conjunction with a storm surge, we could take some steps to go down there and mitigate water getting into the first floor of the pump station. So you can at least slow it down quite a bit to the point where certainly a sump pump would be able to keep up. Sump pump currently discharges outside, so there's steps that we could take if we were to run into another tidal event like
So does
this.
the water come through the foundation, or is it coming through the door in this case and other things? Is it?
With this, it's actually the wall, so, I'm sorry, the door. So the concrete wall is up all the way around it. It's just when you get to that, entry door, where the concrete has to step back down to allow that opening.
If it's an infrequent event, you could build a wall around the building that's 2 or 3
Yes.
feet higher, right, for a short period.
Right,
Because again, this doesn't stay water, this only stays water at the height of the tide.
yes,
Yeah, so you get an hour max of pressure on
right,
it, even in a storm event,
right.
Sandbag it?
or sandbag.
No, not for that one. I think
Yeah.
concrete wall's better.
Concrete wall sounds nice.
Chris, for the long term, like 20 years out, is this pump station planned to stay in this area forever?
Can't move.
What,
Well, I
right,
didn't know if there was a different plan.
yeah, currently, certainly when we go to, we were gonna push this back, I think, till 2029, or possibly further. That's when we would pick everything up,
Okay, so it would stay in the same location, but you would just pick it up.
right,
Well, pick it, you're not gonna pick up the sewer lines itself, you're just gonna get the mechanics up.
correct, right, the plumbing would stay where it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Plumbing's already wet.
Yeah, right on. There's too much salt water in it, that's a problem.
Next slide, please. So, I think what we have seen in the past, had been limited operating capital, year to year. And we're trying to achieve that goal where, the operating budget has between $500,000 and $600,000 in operating capital a year. Because I think what this would help us do is achieve these smaller upgrades that we need to make, rather than to, one, bond such a small amount of money, or two, try to, pause these projects until we have enough projects that would reach, an eligible bond amount. So, the goal is to achieve that $500,000 to $600,000 a year in capital. Next slide. The other issue that we've had that has gone along with this is typically we have, utilized our reserve funds to pay for some of this stuff. We've recently used some for engineering. We have also used our, investment funds to supplement the operating budget. We're trying to move beyond that, because currently we're kind of taking that money out, but we're not putting it back. So as you can imagine, if we did that with our household expenses, it certainly wouldn't last too long. So I think we need to move away from that model, where we're not doing that all the time. Next slide. So last year, when we presented the budget, we had kind of proposed a stepped approach. We did kind of a 4-year forecast as to what we thought we needed to do and how we could, step back the use of those funds. And next slide. So for the proposed FY 2025 budget, We're proposing using investment income of $60,000, $85,000 of the sewer fund balance, and $100,000 of investment funds. So the sewer user fees, based on this rate, would be $1,639,893. The current rate is $569.87. We're proposing a 14.9% increase to get us to $654.87. So it's an increase of $85. The next slide. And this is kind of the forecast for FY '25, '26, '27, and '28. As you can see, we would back down the use of the investment funds to zero, starting in FY '26. And we would also start pulling down that use of the fund balance. And those are the projected rates, for the next 3 years. Next slide. So I know that the 14% increase sounds a lot, like a lot of money. I just kind of wanted to put that in perspective as to where that places us, with other sewer districts and other publicly owned treatment works in this area. As you can see, for about the same cubic foot of water, Kennebunkport, is still down in about the lower third compared to some of the other districts. These numbers that you see will change. I can tell you that Kennebunk is doing a large capital upgrade right now at their plant. And I also know that Saco is currently doing a $30 million upgrade. So I believe that you'll see their numbers change quite a bit. So, we'll still be, in the bottom third for those rates. Next slide. So this is, kind of what we have proposed for capital in the coming years. So fiscal year '26, we'd be looking at the Ocean Ave, South Main, and Turbot's Creek pump stations, having those designed and replacing the variable frequency drives in the 2013 service truck. FY '27, we'd be looking at the construction of Ocean Ave, South Main, and Turbot's Creek pump stations. FY '28, we would do the design on Mills Road, Mills Lane pump station. And then we'd replace the 2006 jetter and axial flow pumps at the plant. And FY '29, we would do the construction of Mills Road and Mills Lane pump station. So that's currently what our, capital improvement plan looks like in the coming years.
Where's the Mills Road?
The Mills Road pump station is just after you go by Fireman's Park. It's on the,
Firefighters Park.
yes, Firefighters Park. On the same side of the road, just after it.
You know where the firefighters park?
Yes, I do.
Okay, just check.
I often go on the little truck there.
Mike is
I
pleased
can
to know
fit in
that,
it.
yeah.
That's my truck.
I think I saw you in that fire truck.
Next slide, please. Oh, and Lori had a question.
No, I have no question.
Oh, okay. So we did meet with the wastewater advisory committee on Friday, March 29th, and went over the budget in detail with them. They reviewed the budget, and at the meeting, they were unanimously approved what we had presented to them for this year. And next slide. So, and the only other thing I want to bring up, I know that you had seen some larger increases in a few of the line items, one being electricity. It's not a result of the new pump stations going in or anything like that. It's simply the increased rates that we're seeing. And then the other would be the chemical line item. We've just got a notice from Harcross, who supplies our chemicals at the plant, and there was an increase on the hypochlorite, the sodium bisulfite, as well as the polymer that we're going to need for the new presses. So
Electricity actually jumped higher than the fuel cost
yes.
in the petroleum. And was that a new contract we put in? Did we have to renegotiate that, or is that just use?
That's across the whole, remember that came up during
Yeah.
our budget discussion.
Right, and I think Nicole had looked at the numbers on that, and based on the kilowatt usage and the rate increase, that's what drove that.
Yep.
The other thing is sludge hauling with the
Oh,
PFAS.
yes, yep. Yeah, so, you know, with the advent of the new presses going in, we're hoping that, you know, we're gonna be online with the new centrifuges in June. So certainly, at this point in time, we're gonna start having the hauling off the raw sludge rather than continuing with the compost program. So what you're seeing there is the money that we think we need this year to achieve hauling off that raw sludge.
And that was the PFAS issue, they won't take the compost anymore.
That's correct. So right now, we're prohibited from land applying any compost, so it does have to go to landfill.
So we understand that this budget is an increase. It is in alignment with what we had projected last year in order to get our capital equipment and capital reserve up to a level that we believe is sustainable. We also had dipped into the use of investment funds more last year. We were trying to give you a ramped approach when we saw these changes last year. And so this gets us to that point of starting to reduce that use of investment funds and use of sewer fund balance, and to start reinvesting in the system in a small way, because otherwise everything gets bonded.
Anybody in the audience have any questions? No? Anybody out in, nobody hands raised? Okay,
Just a
so,
quick one. On the 2018 stuff, Chris, and everything else you took us through, from the 2018 study, is there anything that you or Eric feel that is missing from everything you presented that we are going to need to look at?
As far as equipment goes, as far as capital upgrades?
Capital upgrades?
No, not at this time. No, I think, you know, Eric and I have looked at that, and, you know, we have plugged that into the CIP plan for the coming years. Not to say that we couldn't have an unexpected failure that we need to address. I mean, we have had that come up over the last couple of years where we've lost, you know, either a return pump or a press feed pump or something like that. So far, we've been able to manage that with the operating budget, taking care of that replacement and deferring something else. But I would say for the most part, that should cover it.
but anybody else? Okay, did you have, oh, okay. I'd like to have a motion made that says we accept the budget and establish the fiscal year 25 rate at $654.87.
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0. Thanks, good job.
Great, thank
Nice
you.
job.
Thank you.
Next is the Cape Porpoise Pier budget.
And we have Frank Orr, our harbor master, here.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Frank got the award for the prettiest budget presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead and move forward on the slide here. The pier statistics are similar to last year. We have 60 pier members at the pier, with 33 of them being commercial, 17 recreational, 6 punt users, and 4 dealers. And we're up to 232 moorings in town waters if you include all the anchorages and the pier members who have their moorings paid for in there. It's about a 6.8% increase since last year. There are pending requests for new moorings waiting in Cape Porpoise Harbor, but obviously the wait list is blocking most of those from being approved. Continue keeping everything running, supporting the Cape Porpoise Pier Rehabilitation Project, managing the new public boat launch, and support existing aquaculture and promoting new development in the harbor. Excuse me. We met, the Pier Advisory Committee and I met on March 27th. we reviewed the budget, and it was unanimously approved by the committee members who were in attendance, 4-0. Total revenue from last year to this year increased about 3.3%. There was a bit of a shortfall in the budget. It was a $4,846, and the most effective way to cover that shortfall was to increase the fuel markup. We'd like to bring it up 10 cents. It would be a 65 cents per gallon markup. There were a few other options discussed with the peer committee meeting, but none of them were effective at covering the shortfall. The last time we increased the markup was in fiscal year 2023, right before I started, and it was 10 cents at that time as well. The budget is actually quite similar to what I presented last year. Most of it just went up by CPI. The biggest category that changed from my last budget was actually the waste removal. That one's been going significantly over budget every year, largely because the fishermen have pretty much all been using prepackaged frozen bait, and there's a lot of packaging waste that comes from that, so the dumpsters are always full. In past years, you could get by with one waste pickup a week, but that's just not the case anymore. I have to do two a week in the winter and 3 or possibly more in the summer.
Wow.
And there's 2 dumpsters down there now, where there used to be just 1, I believe. So we just, the budgeting just didn't keep up with it, so I raised it up to $15,000. We're already over budget for this year, and we still have a quarter of the year left almost.
It's a busier quarter.
Yeah, and they've been very busy this winter. A lot of the fishermen left to go to the river or hauled out, and the dumpsters are still pretty full every pickup.
It's tough.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, most of the budget is very similar to last year, just adjusted for CPI. But I'll entertain any questions that anyone has about the budget.
If we run into an issue with if we unfortunately run into an issue with the pier project, we don't really have anything substantial for repairs in this budget?
No, there's no capital.
So
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be
yeah, the waterfront capital is held in our peer reserve account, and so larger capital expenses come from that. In this budget, we do have a reduction in revenues of $5,000 because we're anticipating some loss in revenue sales during construction. So if construction did not occur, we would have that $5,000 leeway to make amendments to the expense side as well.
Okay.
Do the restaurants there have their own dumpsters?
Yes. Yes,
Sure
there's,
they do.
Question though.
they both have their own sets of dumpsters.
And it's hard for me to understand that 2 dumpsters get filled up in the wintertime by just
I can
fishermen.
explain that for you, if you'd
Okay,
like
go,
me to.
I would.
Most of the
In
fishermen,
your mic.
most of the fishermen are using frozen bait this time of year. So it comes prepackaged in either bags, 50-pound bags or 50-pound boxes. So then they go ahead and they empty the boxes and the bags into drums to put them on the boat, and they throw the waste in the drash. That's why the dumpsters are getting full.
Okay,
And it's only gonna get
Worse.
used more, it's only gonna get worse, yeah.
Worse because,
Worse because people are moving, fishermen are moving more towards frozen than they are fresh.
Is that because of availability? Is that?
I think it's because the fishermen, they don't wanna pay for the salt, they don't
It's
wanna.
gotta be cheaper.
It's just, it's an easier way for
Gotcha.
them to do the bait, but, you know, it's also costly because you have to get rid of the waste, which is all the bags and the boxes.
It's costly to us, but it's
Right.
more effective for the fishermen, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
just what's
it
so,
is,
so it's, yeah.
Gotcha.
And they have a better chance. A lot of the fishermen are buying small freezers, and they'll go and they'll buy 6 or 8 pallets of bait, and they'll have it in their freezer, and they'll just take out what they need on a daily basis.
Yeah, they'll bring down a truckload at a time and prep it, stick it in
You
the,
won't see any more trucks like I used to have go around the corner and spill bait juice.
Oh, thank God.
And don't have that aroma when you're there as we're dumping out the fish?
It was lovely in the summertime. I'm gonna miss it.
Those days are gone.
Yeah. Wow. Things do change.
All right, that's good.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll need a motion to accept the budget, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the Cape Porpoise Pier budget as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0. The next is the Dock Square parking lot budget.
Nicole Evangelista is gonna take you through that.
So in the Dock Square parking lot budget, I'll just go over like for the fees, we have the 600,000 in there for revenue. For the expenses, our salaries include our parking lot attendants, the summer officers. We have a split for our IT technology specialist. We put 25% of his salary in there, and then 10% of the communications and event specialist in the salaries. Most of the expenses in here are just what we have to have for running the parking lot. We did add $10,000 for the Dock Square light posts under the equipment line item for this year. And then we also have a transfer out of $421,000, and these are for expenses that's transferred out to the general fund, and these are expenses that occurred in the general fund that are related to the parking lot. And so between the revenues and the expenses, that gives us a net increase of about $15,000 in this budget. Any questions?
What was the increase of the transfer to the town?
It was the capital funding,
Yeah.
so it was about 105,000 in capital funding.
Good.
So our revenues are up about 20%, right? That's, and
So
what-
this is with the new $5 fee per hour,
Exactly.
and so
Yep,
it's difficult to know exactly how that will play out, but this is our estimate.
yep.
Yep.
You assume the same volume, you assume just, yeah,
Any questions?
people need to park.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the Dock Square parking as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0. Government wharf budget.
You're up again. Oh, I am. So in the government wharf budget, it was sent to the committee for approval, and we did increase the dues to offset the budget for the various members. So for the lobstermen, we increased it from 500 to 600. The commercial dues increased from 300 to 350. The base dues from 200 to 250, and the student from 150 to 200. And then with this increase, it brings the total revenue to about $13,550. And the majority of the expenses is the electricity, which is for the bait shed and running the hoist and the lights. And then the small expenses in this budget is for pier maintenance. So that gives us a net of about $70.
Tight budget.
At least it's not the red.
Right.
That's right.
Well, I'd like a breakdown on that $70.
Spend it wisely.
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion for the government wharf budget.
I'll make a motion to approve the government wharf budget as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0. Okay, the next item on the agenda is number 9, Growth Planning Committee's recommended 2024 comp plan short-term strategies for implementation. Galen's here, I see him.
Good evening, Select Board.
Good evening, Galen.
Gala.
Yes. So I wanted to address this tonight. This is a fairly new process for a lot of us. We just implemented the comprehensive plan and adopting it. And so we're looking at now how we're going to implement this. And so your growth planning committee serves as that advisory role to do a lot of the research and dig into the details, so to speak, for the planning board and the Board of Selectmen in reviewing possible policy changes and implementing our comprehensive plan. And so normally this would be an annual goal-setting type process that we would do after your November report's been submitted. Because I started a little bit newer after the fact, we had to start that process a little bit delayed after LD 2003. And so what's in front of you is I had the Growth Planning Committee sit down and say, here are the short-term strategies in your comprehensive plan. And I'd like to know what you think, from hearing from the community, you would like to implement for 2024. And so I do have an outline of, you know, how they're going to potentially implement this, but the number one topic, surprise, was stormwater was a concern from the committee. The second one was also exploring the growth maps, if we need to make any changes there. So those are the two priority items for the committee they would like to address. These are just recommendations. And this memo that you received tonight was sent to the planning board because, again, they take direction from you and the planning board. And so they want just common direction from you to say, hey, this is what we'd like you to tackle. We think this is a good idea, or no, we think there's these other priorities that you really should be looking into. So that's what this discussion's for. They just need some sort of direction to move forward.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I thought that's what we were gonna do with the climate committee that we're thinking about establishing. And it seems like this is, I don't understand why.
It's like a duplication of
Yeah,
efforts.
it seems odd to me that we would be doing two things at the same time.
Yep, so I can answer that. That's a good question, and there might be some overlap with some of these different committees that we have. In your administrative code for the town, the Growth Planning Committee is charged with any changes to the land use ordinance. So if you're looking at making any changes in that regard, it has to go through that committee. Certainly, there's the Conservation Committee, there's the Climate Resiliency Committee. Some of these are overlapping topics where it might be good to have a joint session and discuss this and hammer it out. But anything that deals with the land use ordinance has to go through the Growth Planning Committee, as well as it has to make sure any land use ordinances also coincide with your comprehensive plan. That's a state law, that's a requirement we have to follow.
So I would say it differently for the write-up of what your strategies and plans to implement. I would say that you would take guidance, like if the climate committee or whatever name we're gonna supply it, came up with a suggestion for an ordinance, it would come in to the growth planning, like that would be the process. This group would develop, this group would then, feed into, because then the growth planning committee would come up with the ordinance language, and so that's why we actually got some questions from residents after we started talking about the growth planning committee of what's the difference between the proposed growth planning committee, or not the climate committee versus the trust. So we're actually sort of confused. I'm, like who's on first type of thing. So I was with you when I was reading down. I'm with Sheila and Alan. Just when you're reading down, then we hit the climate stuff. It seemed like, well, wait a minute, who's leading?
Well, this is certainly a point where there ought to be overlap between what the Sustainability Committee and the Growth Planning Committee are doing, particularly when you speak to educate community members about climate impacts, such as more frequent flooding, wetlands, low-lying, et cetera. I mean, that's absolutely one of the strategies. So there would be some cooperation and some overlap there. And certainly if one of the strategies in the sustainability approach had to do with ordinance changes that dealt with land use, this is definitely where the communication and the interaction would be. So I see just an underscoring of the synergism between the two rather than a concern of overlap.
And to raise just another example, so like when we get into the discussion of stormwater, how do you manage stormwater, right? What best management practices do you use? Your climate resiliency is probably going to be more your education arm. That's going to be out in the field educating people, hey, this is what you can do, go to those different open houses and things. But at the same time, your growth planning committee also needs to understand those best management practices and how it relates to putting that into an ordinance language, if there is an ordinance language changes that are being suggested. And so it sort of makes sense to have one meeting where they can really talk to the experts and get a good grasp of these concepts, which are foreign for a lot of community members.
So I'd like to see both these committees kind of work together on this, so they come back out with the same conclusion.
Yep.
Instead of, you know.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I just thinking about the setup and the possibility of what could happen through the processes. I feel like you always, like when you're doing processes and committees, I always feel that you need to have one committee as the focal. And then the other committees or groups within departments should then take lead or do their part of it. But one committee has to come back to the board and say, you know, we think we need to look into the water runoff. And we suggest that the growth planning committee look at any ordinance changes, and we'll go off, and we suggest us as the climate committee go off and look at education. And so I wouldn't necessarily put it in the mission of the growth planning. I would put it in whatever, because you'll take stuff from the planning committee or anything else that comes out through the year within the growth planning committee that has to go and start to do some ordinance. So I would say it differently. Things that impact ordinances would always come in through the growth planning committee.
Absolutely. It would.
Yeah, and I would say that would be one of your things. So then if something came in from the climate committee, that would feed into you guys. But I think it's just, I get confused when I start seeing the language spelled out this way. If I just came in cold, I wouldn't know who's got the leadership.
So again, any land use ordinance change is going to the growth planning committee. That is a state law requirement. We can't change that process.
Right.
But
Nor would we want to.
But what I would say is, you know, on May 7th, we are working in the process right now to have Maine DEP, the experts that deal with low impact development, to come to the table and educate the members on this is what the technology is. And maybe we would invite the climate committee or any just member of the audience, any town resident wants to learn more about the technology and what they can do on their properties to retain stormwater. That would be a forum that people can learn at the growth planning committee meetings.
So I would then say, maybe, you know, this is something that we maybe need to bat around a little bit, just so that we draw some clear lines. So Galen, like you were just talking, you have an in with the agencies about stormwater and what towns are doing, or different technologies that you talk to us about the new stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe it's not the climate committee that does the stormwater impact runoff. Maybe that completely falls into your purview and it doesn't fall in to the climate committee.
Could be.
So basically what she's saying is look into the duplication of efforts. That's all. Right?
I'm okay with what you're proposing. I think that I am. I'm just saying.
No, I'm laughing to Sheila's
Oh.
because she's like, right?
Right. I agree with you.
Thank you.
And I agree with John, too. So I think that this can be worked out. We all have the same intentions and the same goals. So I think that can be worked out. I think it's a well-put-together document that you put together. Yeah.
I mean, again, if there's other direction that the Board of Selectmen say, this is a top priority item, we understand, you know, we'll take marching orders, what you think is best for the community. These were just the recommendations from the Growth Planning Committee to you for feedback. So I'll let them know that there's no changes at this point in time.
Right, so what we're taking away is that these are the strategies we want them to focus on.
Yes.
And come back with how they might differentiate the work of a sustainability committee
And it's
versus the GPC.
Exactly. And it's a working process. I mean, it's something that's going to change over time as things change. But I think having something laid out is a good way to go about it.
Can I ask the board and Galen, would we want to add in here something about, for growth planning, who in the town thinks about traffic as we're growing as a town? You know, like, is there ability to increase the road width? Or, you know, as our town grows, we don't have major arteries within our town that we dump traffic into. So how do we manage that? Who in our town manage that? Is that something that we would put on the charter for the growth planning committee, or is that another department?
Well, the major roads that we have in town are state-owned, so it's Route 9 and Log Cabin Road. So, and when you get over to Lower Village, I believe 35 is state-owned as well. So I think that the state has the say in those roads. Those are the major thoroughfares through the town of Kennebunkport.
Right, but would we want to at least put it on somebody's mission docket, that they have that, you know, for the non-state-owned roads, that they're the ones that are looking at that for traffic?
Yeah, I would
for us?
assume it would be on there when you're talking about growth and planning, but maybe not.
I-
Is traffic not considered?
Again, I would say Public Works would probably be the more appropriate department that handles the infrastructure for the town-owned roadways.
Yeah.
If there's standards you want to look at, then yes, that's the growth planning. But
That's the part of it, is as we're growing as a town, is
But-
there things that we need to do for our own
You want to
roads?
talk about width and intersections and things, that's
Yeah.
not public works, I think.
No.
Is it, or is it?
Well, so you're,
I think what might be beneficial is to have maybe an educational session with a traffic engineer.
Okay.
Because the reality is that the kind of growth we're having doesn't register on a traffic engineer's in terms of when they look at expansion or double lanes or things of that nature. So maybe we just have to better understand that as a starting point.
okay.
Maybe we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist, is that what I'm hearing?
I'm saying
Well,
that
it makes
it's,
sense. I mean,
everything is relative.
You're right on, yeah.
And so normally if you were building a Dunkin' Donuts, you would have a traffic engineer talk about the number of trips. And when you have a larger subdivision, they look at the number of trips. But trips from residences are nothing in comparison to trips from commercial. And so I think as part of the traffic and the growth, our comprehensive plan, also in terms of roads, I wouldn't call it traffic, but it's how we have multi-use roads, you know, how you make them pedestrian and bicycle friendly, and how we look at traffic patterns in different ways than just cars. So I think it is a bigger subject, and you might want some basis points to weigh things with before we make changes.
Yeah, I think I'm just looking for who's the accountability, and I think that the guidance to the growth planning group is good, Lori. I think from my perspective, we do have that nuance of a whole bunch of summer traffic that we have to keep at the forefront, you know, bus traffic. So when we're doing things, I just need to know who in the town is, you know, thinking about it.
All right,
Okay.
so the direction is okay as far,
Yep.
are we okay?
Okay.
We don't need a vote, we just,
Nope.
you got the direction.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, it's nicely presented, thanks. Thank you very much. So, the next one is consider the formation of the Sustainability Committee. The March 28th meeting that we had, just a couple of weeks ago, was the establishment of the climate, or exception of the Climate Action Plan and the establishment of the committee. And so I wanted to make sure that when we did this, I had asked, when we did the overall plan, I asked that the committee please take a look at the Growth Planning Committee, what the Growth Planning Committee has done as far as their and our voters voted on, accepted the 2023 Comprehensive Plan. And those items that are in there regarding climate be considered in the general, the main categories that we have in the current plan that was approved on March 28th. I also wanted asked the committee to do it, and they accepted the assignment to make sure that we include coverage of the tasks that we had where the select board, after a lot of public meetings, came up with their goals for climate action. And so I took a look at that. And there were 39 tasks in the 2020 document that was approved by the Select Board. So 39 tasks, not too bad, but I took a look at what had happened was in there, it was like we used to do with the comprehensive plan, that we would give assignments people for the different things and that were in there for goals and objectives and so forth, and we would then assign somebody to it. And I wouldn't say for the most part, but a lot of the times, like somebody said, the comprehensive plan would go up on a shelf and gather dust, and we didn't necessarily do a lot of those things. That we did some, but we didn't do a lot of the things that are in the comprehensive plan. So I took a look at the 39 tasks, and out of the 39 tasks, I won't read the whole thing, but the town manager had 11 of them. The Conservation Commission had 10. The department directors and staff had 9 of them. The Board of Selectmen have 9 of them. And Planning and Codes had 5. And the Kennebunkport Climate Initiative had 5. And I don't even know if the Kennebunkport Climate Initiative is still active in tying in with our plan, but they had 5. And the town staff had 3, the Shade Tree Committee and so forth. So it's not impossible, but it's clear to me that the tasks need to be addressed properly. It can't be done by just assigning these to people who don't necessarily have the time, and they're very involved in everything else that's going on in town. So that's why I'm really pushing to have that we're calling it the Climate Resiliency Committee established. And so I added it to the agenda because I thought we should talk about it. And I think we need to come up with the objectives and the expectation for committee members. I think we need to decide on the size of the committee, whether it's going to be 5 people or 7 people, the makeup of the committee, and the reporting frequency to the board and the public. And I know that both Sheila and Alan would like to have it be a quarterly reporting out to the select board, and I'm in agreement with that. I think that's a pretty good benchmark. So anyway, I'm open to suggestions of the objectives and expectation of the committee, what we're expecting to do, and then at some point in the next few weeks, we get this thing put together, and then we'll find out how we're going to do how we're going to establish the committee. John, I asked you if you had some comments about that.
Yeah, thanks. I would like to just share the perspective of the Climate Action Planning Task Force. You remember, these are the folks that brought us the strategies that we approved at our last session. And we met last night just to discuss what we thought we might suggest that this committee would have in terms of its raison d'etre, of its charter, if you would. And probably the best way that I heard to describe it is we were hoping this would be a working committee with an advisory relationship to town staff and to the town manager. Again, not to appoint or to direct town staff in any way, but again, have an advisory relationship with them, but to be a working committee that, for instance, one of the strategies we approved was to assess the cost effectiveness of having alternative energy on municipal buildings. So this is an ROI, return on investment type of activity. The thought might be that this committee would do the research, would look at looking at an ROI, what is the technology out there, what is the past experience of folks that have tried to do this, all this kind of activity to put together a white paper, if you would, and then have that as something that would be presented to the town, given to the appropriate committees or to the town manager. But it's that kind of a role that we envision with this committee. There are folks that have an interest, have a background, have a willingness in time to be able to take the strategies that were identified and do some of the heavy lifting to offload staff having to do this kind of deal, but focused on again, on the research, on building proposals, not proposals strictly, but working plans, ideas of how it might happen.
Education as well.
Well, the education is definitely a piece of it.
Yeah.
As you know, there are many strategies. Education is one of them, and here we saw tonight that has a very strong overlap with the with the Growth Committee, which, you know, isn't surprising. As Mike had just pointed out, an awful lot of these climate-oriented concerns are in our comprehensive plan. They are in the direction to many of our committees. It's just a matter of having somebody to help keep it focused and do the heavy lifting to support it. And that's the idea that we have as a task force for what this committee might look like. Again, in no way to direct or to control town staff. They make no decisions. They have no authorities. If anything's going to work for ordinances, what are other towns doing with ordinances? I know that the Maine Beach Commission has a wonderful stack of examples of how people have changed ordinances to be more climate sensitive and responsible. So this committee might take a look at those and look what those ordinances might look like, and then bring some suggestions, just lay out some thoughts to the appropriate committees of what they might want to consider in ordinance changes to be climate supportive. What would enable residents to be able to respond to the challenges that they're seeing in climate. They don't write the ordinance, they don't pass the ordinance. It is an advisory role, a working relationship with the town. So that was the concept. Yeah.
So is this committee you're talking about, we already have? The people who worked, dealt with the climate change thing?
The task force.
The task force?
Uh-huh.
They're already in place.
Well,
No,
I'm sorry. No, the task force will soon dissolve.
We'll just dissolve.
And this committee now will,
So this will be a new committee?
yes, this would be,
That's my
I'm sorry.
question.
No,
All right.
we're proposing, this was one of the proposals that
Yeah,
came from
I
the.
thought, when you were discussing it, I thought you were talking about the same committee we had
No,
here.
no.
This is going forward.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah,
I mean, the people that are on this committee now can still apply.
sure.
Exactly.
Right, no,
You know, and that would be kind of the thought, that we would, we'd put out a request for folks that would wish to be part of this committee. And then we would have a process that would entertain who would sit on it. And thinking of a small number, of five to seven folks. It doesn't have to be a large committee. But interested in doing the heavy lifting that is required to get the information, pull it together, almost in senses of white papers, to provide opportunities to offset the task from town employees, that they're going to do the research and the heavy lifting to try to accomplish that. So that was the concept of it.
Okay, Mary Beth, your turn.
Thank you, John. You're welcome. Thank you, Mike. So I think my initial thoughts are, we might wanna, as a board, because I am listening, and I'm thinking, as a board, we might wanna look at the plan that we just approved. I'm just floating this out here. We wanna look at the plan we just approved, and then as a board, maybe pick some of the items that maybe the task force, that's in place right now would agree that those would be the priority items. Because I'm just going back to, we have a finite number of people within town, within all the departments. And everything sort of always comes back to a small group of people, mainly department heads. So I'm just wondering if it would behoove us to, as a board, sit down and say, here's the plan that we approved, here's the, 5 or 6 or whatever the number of items are, that we would give some direction to this group that says, here's your top priorities that we would like you to work over the course of the year. And then they can do things like you said, do the white papers, do the thought process. Hopefully we'll have subject matter experts that will apply to this committee and be able to give that breadth and depth of knowledge. And then we have them come back to the board. I'm a little hesitant when you say go and talk to other committees or go to the town groups, the departments, because I think that's where we might start getting a little fuzzy.
But isn't the question here whether we want to do a committee, not what the committee's gonna do? I mean, that.
We
that's a
voted
blatant-
for the committee.
No,
Yeah, we did.
I
We
think the
approved it.
committee is a given.
Well,
That was a-
We voted 5-0 for the
Right.
committee.
Yeah.
We're talking now about the makeup of the committee and so
Well,
forth.
in the charter.
The charter, yeah. You voted for it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But, yeah.
See, I was thinking that we were talking about the climate committee still, but you're saying it's dissolved or?
That was
it's
the,
going to dissolve.
that was the planning. That was-
So
that
the,
was with- That was with the
was presented.
cohorts and
right,
other.
the original task force was created in developing a climate action plan. And so now we're they had a termination date. And so
Yeah.
now they're terminating, and you're looking
All
at a new committee.
I would suggest like we do it on a yearly basis. We have the quarterly reviews, like the suggestion was. We have them come back to the board so that, with the guidance of Lori and other department heads, we can then decide whether or not we want further things done. And then we can direct it based on people's workloads, just so we don't get, a lot of, yes, you need to go talk with the growth planning committee now or whatever. So this can be the focal, the hub. So then redirection can happen instead of just a lot of cross-tracks over groups. And that also keeps the board informed. And I think I'd like to have, because we had so many people come here, I'd like to make sure that we have open meetings, that the public's able to come and follow the process too. 'Cause
Well, yeah, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
My vision is that the committee would meet like the planning board does, or one of the other, that it would be,
So I just wanted, before you get carried away, we have a
And
very,
we have a 5-course meal at every meeting.
we have a very tight schedule for this meeting room and for our staff that records it. And so having another one in the mix, I mean, the beach committee will tell you how challenging it is to find a time to meet. So I don't,
okay.
All right,
let's
but-
look at that.
Let's not set that. That's something that we certainly
To
can.
talk
we
about.
can explore and talk about, yeah.
But anyway, transparency, I agree. So I agree with that. Find some way to be really transparent about it and open discussion and so forth. I have no problem. I think that I think the idea that Mary Beth said that we would maybe in the beginning, we set some 4 or 5 items that are priority and have them work on it. And then I think after that the committee, as it gets its wings and gets working together and get over the learning curve, whatever they're gonna do, is that they should be setting their own priorities consistent with what we want, but they should be setting their own eventually. So I'm just saying, but I think what Mary Beth said is probably the right way to start. What do we want, what we feel is and with Lori, what do we feel are the most pressing items? We already know that the floodwaters that we're looking at is a priority. That's a given. We're already working on those, and we put, there's money in the budget for the study of the river in conjunction with Kennebunk. So, and what we're gonna do there. So I think that it's almost like the flood part and what we're doing mitigation there is probably gonna be a priority for maybe outside the committee, because we all know that it's a priority. I mean, they can certainly work on it, but right now, we got so many people looking at it that, and what we're trying to do, mainly the town staff.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's important to have the hub center as the board, because then you say, okay, this one's out of that committee, and this one's actually in implementation, or, in different departments where they're doing their expertise, and it's in the, because we don't want duplication, and we don't want crosstalk and confusion. I think that might be a good type of process flow. And I think I'd like to see, I'm okay, maybe 6 or 8 members.
Should have an odd,
Not an odd number.
yeah. Either 5 or 7.
Yeah, I was thinking even. I'm 8 of 8, I like even. If they stopped at 7, I wouldn't be here.
7.5.
Yeah.
Any other comments? So what I'd like to do for the next meeting is I would like to have us have a little session about, the makeup, what we're planning on, and what maybe some of our priorities would be. We can do that in between the meetings, and then we can discuss it. And then I'd like to have a discussion on the number of people that they're all recommending to be on the committee. And then I'd like to we would then set the criteria, and then we just ask for people to apply. Volunteer.
I think that's a good idea.
And then, go through a process like we went through with the town hall and so forth.
Right.
And so that's what I'd like to do. And then once we get that at the next meeting, then we can follow up with the committee, et cetera, and do that, so.
I think that's a good way to go.
Is that, everybody in agreement?
Good.
So we'll talk about that? Mary Beth, you okay?
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be nice, it'll be fun. Okay,
Does anybody want to be in charge of writing up a little mission for the next meeting, or?
I'll
I have writer's cramp.
I'll
Okay.
do it, I'll do it. John,
Okay.
John, I and Mary Beth, we'll get together and
Yeah.
do it.
You can't get together.
Oh, we can't get together.
We'll round
So
robin.
2 of us can, we'll round robin, yeah. So, yeah, that'd be good. Okay, the next item on the agenda is appoint the Bureau of Motor Vehicles agent.
This is new, isn't it? Is this new?
I'm back.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi. So, in the past, I have been the motor vehicle agent, and a few years ago, Rose Wills had asked if she could take on that responsibility. So I turned it over to her, and she is now leaving the town clerk's office, so I'm taking it back. Or I would like to take it back if you appoint me.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
I move to appoint Tracy O'Rourke as Bureau of Motor Vehicles agent.
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other business, Mary Beth?
Nope, I'm all set, thank you.
John?
No, sir.
Alan?
I have none, thank you.
I'm good.
None here.
None for me.
Wow.
My goodness.
Ooh,
Wow.
night.
Write that one down.
Get that warrant passed.
Oh, I love these short
Let's
nights.
do the
Yeah,
warrant.
exactly.
So it's, yeah.
I move to approve the April 11th treasurer's warrant.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
I move to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.